Hey everybody, welcome to the video that I've made about the Germanwings Flight crash. The airplane that crashed in the Swiss Alps just a couple of days ago. There's been a lot of information going around the internet, a lot of talk. It's hard to visualize something if you have a bunch of talking heads telling you exactly what happened. And if you've never seen an airplane cockpit before, they make it sound like it's a huge, complicated order and that everything just happened so fast that there was zero recovery. Anyway, I wanted to dispel some of those myths. The biggest things that the news has been talking about is the autopilot. Where my cursor is, you see those numbers going up? That's the altitude setting knob. Yes, it is just a knob, and you twist it to get the setting that you want. Next to the right of that is a vertical speed indicator. It can tell us which way we're going. We'll talk about that a little bit later. This is an interesting view. This is the CoPilot's view. We'll be going back and forth to this. This is exactly what the CoPilot of the Germanwings airplane saw and experienced. And this is the pilot side. So we'll be getting both views as well as some passenger views and some outside views of really what happened. So we're going to take off here. And as you can see, airplane's rolling down. And as far as we know, from what they know from the cockpit data recorders, is that there was normal communication between the pilot and co-pilot. During this time before they start taking off, they're talking back and forth with each other, going through checklists, as well as talking to air traffic control. When they're on the runway, they're talking to air traffic control. And as they're going down the runway for takeoff, they're talking to each other, listing off air speeds and different points on the runway where they can abort the takeoff or continue on normally. This whole process is pretty much a two-man operation to make sure that everything is safe and operating normally within the airplane. If anything was functioning, anything was not functioning, this is where we would find out. They wouldn't have taken off if there was anything super abnormal. That's the airport that they took off from. They probably made a right-hand turn just like this. Maybe not as steep, I know, but this is the view from their control tower, just as the people on the ground would have seen as they were leaving. As they were climbing out, there's communication between the pilot and the co-pilot. You can see here where my cursor is that I've set the GPS for the route that this airplane was taking when they were going to Dusseldorf Airport. You can see the purple line is being on course, so they're turning and getting on course with the direction that they need to go. That is all pre-programmed on the ground through a flight management system. Basically, the inputs tell the airplane on that specific route what altitude it needs to be, if it is going to climb, how fast it's going to climb, if it's going to descend, how fast it'll descend, and at what altitudes, as well as the course settings and speed. You can see this cursor. This is called a vertical speed indicator. It tells us how fast up and down the airplane is going. Next to that is an altimeter. The altimeter tells us how high we are, and to the left of that is the airspeed indicator. So that will be important once we get along a little bit further ahead on our flight. This is the airplane. The airplane being shown here is Airbus A321. The airplane that crashed was the Airbus A320, a little bit smaller of an airplane, but it generalizes the point of it being an Airbus aircraft. The cockpit, you can see, are all glass cockpits for the most part in the Airbus. There's great cockpits, fly-by-wire system. The news talks a lot about computers flying the airplane. That's true, but the computer takes the inputs from the pilot and just justifies the best way of giving that motion to the pilot. So if the pilot wants to turn left, he gives the indication that he wants to turn left, and the computer says what's the best way to make the airplane go in the direction that the pilot wants. So they flew in cruise for about 25 minutes that we know of. It was a 90-minute flight. You can see that we're on course. I'm speeding up the airplane a little bit here just for talking purposes. I'm not going to make a 35-minute long video explaining everything that happened. But ultimately, they got to a point where they turned northward. And the pilots wanted, we're comfortable enough that the captain needed to use the restroom. So they were at cruise. Apparently the co-pilot was not acting abnormally, or else the captain would not have gone to the back. But once the pilot left, the co-pilot shut the door, and they didn't get in. So you can see how pretty normal things would be. It's not happening in split-second times. This is being sped up, of course, because of the time constraints. There's no reason to show every bit of it. And I want to show how easy it is to make the settings on the airplane. So you can see that they're headed north now, and this is the eerie thing. You see the mountains in the foreground. So probably for about 15 minutes, the co-pilot was able to see the mountains that he wanted to crash into. So this definitely was a premeditated act. He knew exactly what was going on. He knew where he wanted to descend and go. I sped up the airplane a little bit to get to the point where I believe that they started to descend. I believe they were a little bit further inland. As you can see, I'm pushing it forward a little bit more. And at this point, the pilot, the captain, was probably in the restroom, banging on the door, trying to get into the airplane. You can see that they're just about to cross over into land. And we're a little bit further away from where I believe that he started descending the airplane. So I'm speeding things up a little bit here for us. But you can see this is at their cruising altitude of 38,000 feet of where they were. We knew we were there. They confirmed that with air traffic control. Pretty much once they hit that cruising altitude, they started descending. So it's my belief that the descent started about at this point. The co-pilot was in the cockpit by himself, and literally all he needed to do was turn a knob that was right in front of his face, make the indicator down to 100 feet, and make that happen. So you can see that was a view from the passenger, and now we're going back. This is such an eerie view, because this is exactly what the co-pilot saw. He's on an empty captain's chair. He saw the ocean with the mountains in the background. And apparently it was a clear day like this too. So the visibility, this is pretty accurate as to how far the pilot would be able to see. So at this point, I don't think the captain knew exactly what was going on. He was trying to bang in the door, it sounds like. Who knows if he tried to key in everything. But as you can see here on my cursor, the pilot at this point set a downward setting of about 4,500 feet per second down, telling the airplane to descend at that rate. And then he set the autopilot to fly in at 100 feet. This is the interesting part, and you can see exactly how he's setting that and moving that. So as he's going down, you can see that the nose would go over. And at this point, the co-pilot knows that he wants to hit the ground. It's pretty apparent. And it was about an 8-minute descent. As you can see from this, he had 8 minutes to really think about pulling out of it or not. This is what is so eerie to me. As you can see on the left-hand side, right there, is our airspeed indicator. The news talks about a controlled descent, that it wasn't technically a nosedive. You can see that the airspeed is staying constant throughout the descent, which draws right in line that the autopilot was still on, and that the CoPilot just set the autopilot to descend and head towards the mountains. Apparently the CoPilot was breathing normally throughout this whole thing. I think it just confirms that he was pretty darn sick in the head. At this point, the captain knows that the airplane is descending. If you've ever flown, you know when they've pulled power back a little bit and they start to push the airplane down. So, from the captain's view, this is exactly what it would have looked like. The co-pilot, this is what he's seeing. This is what he's looking at. For 8 minutes, he knows, hey, I'm going to crash the airplane at this little mountain over here. I think every time I see this, it just kind of gives me the chills. He knew what was coming. And he knew he had 149 people behind him as well. And I'm getting anxious just talking and watching this, not even being there. So you can only imagine what's going through his head. The only indicator that the captain cannot see out the front, but he can look out the sides and see that they're going down. So you can see this is probably the attitude that the airplane was in. Headed downward. It, of course, is not a nosedive, not straight down, but they were going down at a pretty good clip, pretty straight. The passengers at this point would know that they're headed downwards, getting closer and closer to the ground. The captain would know as well, probably getting more and more frantic that the airplane is going down. They don't know where it's going down to, and I don't think they necessarily knew that they were headed directly into mountains. But they knew where they were going down, and if the co-pilot wasn't letting them in, they wouldn't. So if you were a passenger sitting above the wing, as this is a normal, typical shot, this is what they would have seen on the right side of the airplane. I mean, pretty beautiful countryside, I'm sure, but pretty terrifying thought to think that they're headed right into the mountains. They're getting lower and lower and lower. At this point, there's still no communication with air traffic control. Air traffic control at this point would know that they were going down. I don't know if they changed the transponder, which is the system that communicates with air traffic control, on whether it's going down or not. I believe he probably just kept everything normal and just turned that knob that's right there in front of him. Folks, he had a really long time to think about this. It's pretty disturbing. In the United States, there's a two-person rule in the cockpit. If you've ever flown a lot, you've seen a flight attendant go into the cockpit when the co-pilot or pilot has to use the restroom or come out for some reason. The door is shut behind the crew member leaving the cockpit, and there are two people involved in the cockpit to avoid this situation. I don't know if Europe has this rule or not. I don't know if this airline had that rule, but this is difficult to happen in the United States. So, at this point, the airplane's still going down. I believe that they're low enough now that the captain and everyone on board knew exactly what was going on, that they were going to crash, that they were in the mountains, and that it wasn't looking good. You can see even at this point, there's time for the airplane to recover, plenty of time to pull out. The airplane itself starts giving audible cues. At this point, it knows how high above the ground. It says altitude, altitude, and pull up, and those were ignored. And this is where I pause the video. It's pretty eerie, and I apologize if it's disturbing to anybody, but I just think it's good to visualize what happened. and to see it from his view. This is his seat. This is exactly what he saw right before he hit that tree and mountain in front of him. He knew there were 149 people on board. He knew he was going to kill them. He knew he was going to kill himself too. It'll be interesting to see if he had a suicide note or anything. But this is just a really, really eerie place to stop. Kind of sombering. So, I feel for everyone that had family or friends or relatives on this plane. Fortunately, there are safeguards here in the United States to stop that, and probably effective immediately everywhere else in the world is thinking about their company's procedures to bring this forward. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative. Not necessarily enjoyed, that's the wrong word to use, excuse me. But if you found it informative, give it a thumbs up. It's good to have a visual of what happened. Share it with your friends. Share it with your news friends. It gives them a different perspective of exactly what happened. This wasn't something that just happened in a few minutes or even just a few seconds. It took a lot of premeditation. He's able to see exactly what was going on and exactly what was happening. So thanks for watching. Share it with your friends. Let everybody know about it. It's important to know and to see for yourself. So, thank you.